Good morning and welcome to everybody. Good to see so many people joining the webinar on the virtual leadership. I'll now hand you over to your host, Ed Cooper. Ed, it's over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. And yeah, it's great to see people joining the webinar. Still more people joining as we're going along. So that's really great. We're also putting it out on Facebook this morning, and we'll be recording this and sharing it with people who perhaps can't attend, are still working out there. So today we're talking about the virtual leadership. So being able to lead effectively no matter where you might be. And we're going to be covering off these 5 main areas. The one is about making sure that you think about how you're leading and also look at how you're going to be leading differently. So when you lead remotely, it's going to require a little bit more of your influence. And we'll dig into that. We're going to share with you as well the 3O model, looking at technology, how to use it as a tool most effectively. And also look at your servant leadership mindset. It's a really important mindset to have in leadership right now. Before I get going, I want to put this up on the screen. It's a great time to be a leader. Really is a great time to be a leader. Now that is a belief that's up there, okay? Nothing more than that. It's just a belief. I'd really like to get your thoughts in the chat box on what you believe about that. It's a great time to be a leader. Tell me what you're thinking right now. So just type away in the chat box and I'll pick up on some of the comments that are coming through. Okay, so yeah, it is a great time to be a leader. Need to be stretching myself more. I'm finding it difficult because I'm virtual. Okay, we're going to get into that. That's good. Keep them coming. Anything that's in there, it's a great time to be a leader. Now, listen, this is a belief, and you really need to look at the belief systems that you're holding right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, negativity around, and there's a lot of positivity as well. There's a lot of things to be really grateful for right now. We've got an amazing health service that's supporting us. We're all huddling together to try and make this work while we're on lockdown. So there's a lot to be thankful for. There's a lot of uncertainty. So we need to check in with ourselves to make sure that our mindsets are in the right place so that we can be the very best leader we can possibly be for our team. Another comment coming up here, great leaders taking time to develop. Absolutely a great time to develop your leadership skills. Now, I also wanted to share this model with you. This model is from a guy called Frederick Hertzberg. You might have heard of him. He's an American psychologist. He's probably most known and most influential in business management. And what he came up in his model was he looked at levels of motivation or motivated factors within the workforce, within the workplace. So first of all, achievement. So achievement, look, this is about the drive and determination that someone might have. I mean, that's really high up in their motivators. The second is autonomy. This is about people being in control. Think of it as like, you're in control of a project, or you're responsible and accountable for a team and the results that they deliver. Next, it's progression. So this is about you moving up. What's next? If you're hearing those people in your team say, well, what's next for me? And where's my next role going to be? And where's my place in the organization? That's all about progression. Then there's satisfaction. This is about helping other people. You know that there's people out there that actually where they get their main motivator from is by getting feedback from other people to doing a great job. So if someone says, look, you do a great job with that, that's absolutely fantastic. They get a pat on the back, they get some recognition for it. That's a big motivator. And finally, status. So status might be about money, it might be about the title that they have. If you ever work with that person that they don't really care what they do, that they just want to have a particular word in their title, that's the most important thing to them. So what Frederick Hertzberg said was, or suggested was, that achievement, autonomy, and progression. So drive, being in control, and moving up. What's next for me? They tend to be more focused around the leadership roles. You know, so leaders tend to have those more motivating factors than anyone else. Whereas satisfaction and status, that tends to be more around the followers. So look, if you can tap into those top 3 drivers, you're much more likely to become a better leader. And if you think about some of these points around motivation, the belief system that I shared with you, or the belief quote that I shared with you, it's a great time to be a leader right now. I can't motivate you. Right? That's not my, it's not within my ability. I can't force it, and you can't force it upon anybody. Motivation is very intrinsic. It's very internal. So it's a power within us. And if you're choosing to harness the power off the back of what I say, then you might feel motivated. Okay, but that's it. So therefore, as a leader, that's what your job is. It's really to be able to go out and harness through your communication, through your interaction with people, is to get them to feel that power within them and harness it to push them forward to motivation. Okay, I wanted to share those with you. What I'd like you to do, make sure you've got a pen, piece of paper, taking notes throughout this, getting some actions down. There's going to be a lot of information on here. We will have interaction. I really encourage you through the chat is to interact, ask questions, and Joe will pick up those questions, and we'll do some Q&A midway through and at the end as well. But do take actions for yourself. Really, really important that you're here for an hour. You've got to take something away for you, okay? So this other model I want to show you before I really get into the ins and the outs of today is by a guy called Jim Collins. He wrote an amazing book called From Good to Great. If you've not read it, it's really worth a read. And what Jim was talking about is making sure that we push ourselves as leaders to become level 5 executive leaders. It's basically, it's leading with humility and professionalism. But we've got to start somewhere. So let's have a look at these levels, figure out where you are, where your team is, and maybe what they need to do to get to the next level. So level 1, highly capable leader, highly capable individual. It makes them, you're looking at knowledge and skills and work habits. How good are those disciplines for the individuals out there? How good are their skills? And right now, if you've got team that are furloughed or they're working virtually, this is a fantastic opportunity to be pulling them together and doing some training with them to get them to be highly capable and moving forward. Next level is the contributing team leader. They're making sure that as a group, they're contributing to the success of the team and the organization. Next, it's the competent leader, making sure that they are organizing resources and people. So maybe they're that team leader that's pushing people and supporting people to deliver what's required. After that, it's really moving away from taking the task and delivering it through to actually creating clear, compelling visions. You know, they're really trying to push the standards. They understand that stuff's getting done, but they actually want to see the standards improving. So they're putting things in place to make sure that those happen. And then level 5 is that level of leadership through humility and professional will. Have a look, think about it. Where are you? What might you need to do to build on those foundations that you've already created? Build the belief within yourself as well as a leader so that you can deliver more and more for your organization, for your business, and for your team. And look, ultimately for yourself, you know, it's about what motivates you, right? Okay, so look, I wanted to share that with you as a starter. The virtual leadership information that I'm sharing with you today is based around a group of rules. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing that with you with a lot of information. So do take the notes, do ask questions as we run through. So the first rule in this virtual leadership world that we're in right now is really understanding that leadership is first, right? That has to come first. Location is second. And ultimately, and I'll mention this a few times throughout this webinar, that the timeless principles of leadership, the stuff that you know and understand about leadership, it doesn't really change too much. But what you need to be asking yourself are these 4 common questions. So how do you know that people are really working? What are the systems and questions and check-ins that you're putting in place to make sure that people are working? Are people actually getting enough social interaction? How often are you having a conversation with them? Daily. You must have a conversation at least daily with your team. And it can be, you know, through video call, phone call, a text maybe. And I'll talk a little bit more about the technology, but it's really important that you're communicating and talking, yes, on a one-to-one basis, but also as a team as well. And you know, are we getting good feedback when we need to consider the options that are out there as well? So the interaction, you know, it's interesting. I've been talking to some clients and coaching some clients just recently, and actually the feedback's not coming back from the group, and that's really important. It's like we need to, as leaders, expect that from our team. And how can we be as effective as when we're co-located? And there's a lot of factors involved in things that affect the outcome and the relationship. You know, things like not being able to grab a coffee together and not having those physical cues that we might get when we're co-located. But there are tools and there are ways that we can be as effective. And we've got to make this happen in a new environment. We need to succeed more in this virtual world. There's definitely a better way as we run through that. So rule 2, you know, leading remotely, and we need to accept the fact that it's going to require us to lead differently. The principles might stay the same, but lead differently. You know, according to the Project Management Institute, we've got 90% of project teams have at least one member that aren't located within the team. And you know, nearly 80% of the white collar managers have got at least one direct that works in a different location. So this is not only common before lockdown, it's now nearly 100%. And it's going to continue, probably increasing as we go back as well, because people are probably going to ask to be working from home more frequently because they understand that it works. Managers might want their team to be working in different locations, or not co-located as before as well. So we need to take that into consideration. So the 2 major repercussions that you'll need to think, and we need to think about as leaders, is the communication methods that enabled us to succeed, the ones that have been around for a while, but they've changed. It might be good just to grab a face-to-face meeting, but you know, many of those would have changed now. And the second is the notion's sense of isolation is no longer simply emotional. You know, you're not only alone because you've got sole responsibility for decisions as a leader, or your weight of authority or sense of responsibility, but also you're physically alone, right? And that takes you know, a different mindset, takes us different energies. We need to be much more self-aware of what's going on for us as a leader as well, and what's going on for our team. So we need to be doing something, you know, much smarter, faster, using different tools to fundamentally deliver our active leadership, which has not really changed much at all. So the third rule is working remotely is going to change the interpersonal dynamics. Look, even if you don't want it to, it will definitely change. And you've probably seen that already. So as a leader, one of the things that's really important is that you are being seen as critical to the leadership. And you know, that will suffer in a remote world. So your virtual communication, your interpersonal communication, you need to be aware that you're going to lose some of the verbal, so the non-verbal feedback with people. So some of the body language that you get, some of those even sometimes unconscious cues that you get from people just being in a room together, you're going to lose that. So you're going to need to be much more switched on to asking great questions and understanding maybe what is going on through the video link that you might have, or Zoom link that you might have with people. And you've got to ensure that the messages that you're sending out are really easily understood. You know, that litmus test of give it to your partner, give it to you know, a teenage child in your house. If they understand the message, it's likely that your team will understand it as well. So keeping things really, really simple to understand. And also, you know, find other ways of you know, receiving those critical cues from the team. The basic need of our of humans really don't change. The location, the context of the working location, that might have changed. So they'll still need interaction. They'll still need support. And your job as a leader is just to find out the better way of doing that to support them through it. And this isn't that you're going to have all the answers to this yourself. You're going to need to talk to your team about what works for them. And they might not know either. So this can be a continuous conversation sometimes with people. Some people will want check-ins a lot more than others. Okay, but you need to make sure that you've got a standard that you've agreed to and work to. And remember, you're the leader. So whatever you end up deciding and to support your team that's best for them, best for the organization, best for you and the business, then that's what you will get to implement. Okay, so look, I'm moved away from the kind of getting started bit of an overview, if you like, but here's some of the models that really matter. I hear this quite a lot from people that maybe they're not tech savvy, and that becomes a bit of a barrier. Maybe they feel that technology is a barrier in general, and they don't really want to be utilizing it in its best way. I think that a lot of people at the moment have maybe thought in the past that certain things couldn't be done virtually. Now their mindset is shifting because they're realizing that they're forced into using a particular technology that actually it's pretty good and can get some great results from it. If you look at the interworking gears that propel people together in remote work, there are three fundamental gears to look at. So the leadership and management gear, look, this is the biggest gear that's out there. It's why you've got the job that you've got. The leadership management behaviors that they're expected for you to exhibit, they are the same as they've ever been. If you don't really fundamentally understand what those leadership and management gears are, that's going to be a gap that you need to go and fill. You definitely need to be strong, highly skilled and knowledgeable in those areas. Tools and technology, this is the gear that it's a medium gear, but it's possibly one of the most important ones right now as we are leading differently. We're expecting you to exhibit the leadership behaviors, but using the tools in a different way. And it's a bigger deal than you might think. You know, we've always got, if you think about the tools that are at your disposal to get the job done, which one's the right one, and are you relying too much on one tool than another because it's just more comfortable for you? So some things to really think about there. Your skill and impact gear, it's the simplest concept yet and the easiest one to maintain, yet it's usually the one that people leave out, and it can cause the biggest problem. So identifying those areas for you that need development, for your team that need development, and being really clear about them and putting in action plans and activities to be able to close those gaps, really, really important right now. Okay, so rule 5. So this is the 3O model. Now, the 3O model is based around outcomes, others, and ourselves. We need to be really clear as leaders that when we're leading people, that you're leading them with a purpose of reaching a desired outcome. For you and me now as leaders, we've got to really focus on what's important, and we can uh, definitely be much more clearer and focused in this area. Again, because the barriers that we're getting lack of environmental cues and less repetition of messages as well. For others, we need to lead through people, all right? As leaders, we've got to make sure that we are sharing out activities and actions to people, and we're much more influential when we focus on other people. So if we can ask questions like, how can we allow them to be more successful? How can your team be more successful? How can you build trust? But when you build trust and when you get a win-win relationship with people, you're going to be able to get so much more done. And we can't do it on our own anyway. We've got to have people around us to support us. And you're much more influential when you focus on other people. So trying to focus on and getting people and team members much more engaged when you focus on them and what they want to get out to support the team, that's going to be really key. And the final O is ourselves. A lot of the time, we don't focus on ourselves. We're always the last people to support, and actually, you're the most important people in the organisation. If you don't lead, people can't follow. If people can't follow, they can't deliver what's needed for the organisation and the outcomes. So look after yourself. Look after your beliefs, your mindset. Stay incredibly positive. If you're spotting things in you, in your mindset and your beliefs that are negative, they're gonna soak through into your team, whether you like it or not. So have a system to put in place of being able to knock out the negative and replace it with a positive. Focus on your health and well-being, and ultimately, you can pass that support onto the team as well. We need to be looking after their health and well-being as well. So look, we've set some goals as well out there. We need to be really clear as leaders that we need to be achieving goals of many different types. Organizational outcomes, being really crystal clear so that you can help the team members individually and collectively just to move towards success. How clear are you with those targets? How often do you talk about them? And how often does your team discuss and review it back with you? Think about your team outcomes. People must know what they do and how it fits into the success. At the moment, gone are the little offshoot conversations by the coffee machine that we could have. I've noticed it as well through networking, where you might grab a coffee and then introduce someone who's standing in the corner that would help that person you're having a coffee with. That's gone. We're going to have to be much more conscious and supportive and thoughtful with our communication. So how do you get clarification from your team that they know what they need to do? How do you check in to make sure that they are achieving that? And then there's the personal and individual outcomes. Just think about, at the moment when we're working on our own, it's a little bit like working on an island, and none of the goals and deliverables happen by magic. They've got to have intent around them. So having solid, clear targets, without that, you can find that individuals drift and they're going to lose sight of the big picture. They're going to lose sight of what's going on. So having implementing tools like electronic dashboards, intranets, a WhatsApp group, online project management systems, things like that, they're going to be able to support the team so that you can course correct them as they go through this without going off at a tangent too much. I'm really encouraging teams when they're communicating to communicate at least 3 times a day. You know, there's the morning huddle where we know what we're going for. We're going to go out there and deliver that. There's the check-in with the individual throughout the day. And then there's the end of the day. What's happened? How are people feeling? What needs to be done tomorrow? You know, that communication, that support just enables people to keep focused on their personal individual outcomes. So, okay, we've set them. Now we're going to go and achieve them. Okay, we've all seen how to build SMART goals. I'm sure you've seen this before. If not, it's there for you. But ask these questions of your team and yourself. You know, what are the quantity components of the work that you're doing, and how does the time factor into the success of the work, and how are you going to measure the quality of the output within that? Some really key questions to ask as you run through. And again, you know, some people can work in their own bubble. They can feel that the goals that are being set are too big. So being able to chunk those down into bite-sized chunks, smaller tasks is really, really key. You know, that old adage of like, how do you eat an elephant? You cut it up into small chunks and take it one bite at a time. So you might need as a virtual leader to be able to reduce down the goal into small chunks and check in more regularly to make sure that those chunks are going on. But this isn't micromanagement. This is to be able to support people so that they don't feel alone within it. You've got to get that balance right. Work with your team to understand what works best for them. If you are a coach, you've been trained as a coach, then you will absolutely get this. If you've not, and you need some support development around coaching, then that's what you might need to be putting down from this slide. Understanding coaching and how to ask great questions of your team. It's usually an area that I find most leaders feel that they can improve on. Most leaders feel that they need to have all the answers, right? They've got to tell people what to do and to move them forward, where actually as a leader, if you're a great coach, you probably get more out of your team and better results than you could on your own. Now for coaching at the moment, it is a little bit more complicated because you know, that interaction that you have needs to be much more conscious and intentional than it's ever been. And you're going to communicate through technology, which does create some mental and social obstacles that just don't exist when we're in person. Again, those cues that we might get from people. So you know, make sure that what you're having is a real two-way conversation. It's a true rich conversation. A lot of coaching that happens out there, the coach is taking too much of the talking time. Okay? So just as a general rule of thumb, if you're talking more than a third of the time, then you're probably talking too much. Asking really great questions, curious questions, genuine questions that you do not know the answer to are really good. Look, if you know the answer to a question you're asking, it's a leading question, okay? You're pushing someone towards an outcome that you're looking for. Asking really genuine questions that you don't know the answer to, that's going to be where you're going to get the richness out of a coaching conversation with someone. And remember that when you're having a coaching conversation, our brains crave visual cues, okay? So make sure that you have a coaching conversation over video where possible, you know, especially when you're not in the same room. And finally, always follow up, you know, confirm the message, congratulate the person on a great conversation, say well done on your energy, you know, really great ideas, I can't wait to see the plan, whatever it is, but just follow up with that person after your coaching as well. Again, if you're not skilled in this area, it's definitely one to be scratching up on. There's some great books on coaching out there that you can pick up and run with, or even talk to your own coach about how to coach people. So rule 9. So we're about halfway through. So do put questions in the box. as you run through. I hope you're keeping up with everything. I know I'm working at a fast pace. That is intentional. Okay, there's a lot of information here, and actually, what you might find is that you need a conversation after this with me, and that's absolutely fine as well. I'll pick up the phone, we'll get on Zoom, and we'll have a chat about some of this stuff here if it's helpful to you. But we're moving away now from looking at some of the outcomes that you want to achieve at a distance. We're moving into engaging other people and communicating in ways that really work best for the people that you're working for, working with. So listen, we've all heard of the golden rule, right? The golden rule that you do unto others as you would like them to do to you, okay? And it's a really good starter as a rule. I actually really like to understand how people like to be led and what works for them best. So that golden rule I actually take away from Dr. Tony Alessandro, who came up with the DISC profiling. If you've not done DISC before, it's a really good tool, a good psychometric tool. There's lots of others out there, assessments out there like Myers-Briggs, Insight, StrengthsFinder. Yeah, there's loads, but actually with DISC, they have a platinum rule. So it's beyond the golden rule that says, treat others like they would like to be treated. Well, the only way you can do that is if you understand them. So your job as a leader then is to understand your team as best you possibly can so that you can lead them in the way that works best for them. You can congratulate them in a way that works best for them, communicate in a way that works best for them, manage them in a way that works best for them. And DISC profiling for team members, I've done this a few times for teams out there where we'll take all of the DISC profiles for them and we'll mesh them together. We'll actually see where the preferences and the strengths of the team are, where the areas, the blind spots might be that we need to work on a little bit more. And it gives great opportunity and sources to be able to challenge our styles and behaviors as well. You know, asking those great questions, those neutral questions of people of, look, I want to support you to stay on track. How can I do that better? How can I help you be more successful? If you ask that question of your team and yourself every single day, you would be so many steps ahead of yourself in 2, 3, 4 months down the line, 3, 4, 5 years down the line than you would if you didn't. And also, yeah, how often would you like a one-to-one? And get their input onto that. Rule 10. So look, leading successfully is going to require us to understand what people are thinking, not just what they're doing. We generally will see what they're doing, but we don't always get under the mind of people and understand what they're thinking. So as a leader, you know, we need to see and be seen. So see is going to be how you're going to gather information to share with your organization, with your team. And being seen, like we'll refer to how others are going to get information from you as the leader. So you've got to be aware of how you gather all that information. If all your information is coming from the same 3 sources and you're trying to understand how people work together from email threads and you're giving you data, then that's probably going to limit how you're going to see things out there. So do consider getting information from a widest variety of ways that you possibly can. Process that data in a very clear, accurate manner so that you can get a clear picture of what's going on around you. Ask more people, get more sources, be more alert on conference calls and virtual meetings to get a clear picture of the reality. If you think about, let me give you a metaphor, an analogy on that. If you think about 2 people who've had a car crash, right? The insurance company will go and ask each of the drivers what happened. They've both got a different reality of what happened. Usually it's always the other person's fault, right? But then when you start looking at other sources of information that are out there, like, you know, maybe there's a passerby, another person in a car, someone who was sitting on a bus, someone who was in a shop who happened to look out and observed what was going on, all from different angles. That adds richness to actually what truly happened, and therefore you can get a much better view of reality of the situation. So gathering information is going to be really, really important here. And as a leader, you know, making sure of the impressions that you're making. You know, if people really mostly know you as a signature on an email and not a real person, then you've got to figure out what is it that you're going to try and impress upon your team. Who are you? What's the real you, and why? Why is that you? And as a leader, you know, ask yourself, are you being seen often enough? How visible are you to your team? And what are they seeing? And how do you know that? So really ask those questions of yourself and of your team as well. So rule 11, building trust at a distance just doesn't happen by accident. When you're working remotely, if you think that trust is any less important than it is when you're working together, then that's a shortfall in your thinking. We've got to be building trust. It's much more easily broken when we are working remotely. So you've got to work much harder to build that trust. And look, how do you do that? So you've got the 3 components necessary to build that trust is a common purpose. Do you and the team have the same common purpose to deliver what's required for the organization? Are you really clear where your organization is going, particularly at the moment where we've got maybe there's lower sales in the organization and you're not quite sure what's going to happen when you get back. But we need to wrap ourselves into understanding what the common purpose is right now, even if that's for the next 30 days. Okay. Competence. Do people, do you believe the people that you're leading to be competent? And if you don't, and you've got those gaps, have those honest conversations and development plan for those people as well. The final one there is motives. So are your team willing to go that extra mile for you? And generally, if they know that there's a common purpose and they're very competent, and you've hired the right person for the right behaviors, then they will be willing to go that extra mile. But it's really important to understand when you're assigning the tasks for people that they're the right people for it. So align those with your team. And look, in meetings, understand the people, but make sure that you're thinking, how can you showcase one person in a meeting? How could you push them forward more? How could you let them talk more in the meeting or highlight their strengths? Share praise in public, delegate in public. Those things that, when assigning tasks in a fair and equal way across the team are going to help to build trust with team members as well. All right, I hope you're keeping up. We're on rule 12. So identifying that leadership results, and then selecting the right communication tool as well as you run through it. And for communication to be effective, you've got to strike this right balance between richness and scope. And this comes from a Swiss-German researcher called Bettina Buchel, created a simple matrix to explain this context between richness and scope. And you've got to strike the right balance between whether you want your communication to be rich or whether you just need to get the message broadcast out to people. And we all know that humans communicate in multiple ways: our tone of voice, the expression, our faces, our body language. And we interpret that message based off the back of that. Now, if you're in a physical one-to-one huddle, a coffee, you're going to get a huge amount of richness from the social cues that are out there with that person. You're just focused on that person. Yet we know it's impractical. We can't meet face-to-face, and we can't meet face-to-face every time, and going forward we probably won't either. So Every time we pick up the phone, fire off an email, we're going to miss some of those rich cues. We're going to sacrifice some of that. So you need to be thinking about what's the outcome of the messages that I'm sending out there. Be thoughtful in that. So look, web meetings are a really good example where you're using Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams. They're really good to get a fairly rich scope of information from people, asking questions and getting people to interact throughout it. You know, today I'm trying to get the balance right. You can see me, you've got some cues. I'm asking you to put questions in the box and get some interaction come through. But also at the same time, I know that it's a message that I need to get out. So there's less interaction today than perhaps there would normally be, because I'm trying to get this balance right between that and the scope as well. So rule 13, so maximize a tool's capacity, so, otherwise you're going to minimize the effectiveness. The technology is there to help us, okay? We need to understand how the technology can best do that. So we've got to think about the tool and which one fits the right job. So let me just break these down a little bit more for you. Video is going to help you add that visual components that you wouldn't normally get in a communication. So rather than broadcasting a voicemail or an email, it's just as easy to press record, do a video and send that out there to people. It adds a face, it adds the visual cues, and it also can add some richness to it, which allows people to be more trustful of you, and also enable them for you to be seen as well. Make sure that you've got somewhere to put file locations. This is getting much more common now, SharePoints, Google Docs and things like that, but allowing documents to be in a permanent location that people can go back to. And that includes those recorded messages as well, that people can go back and refer to them. If you just need to get the information out there and it's a message, a permanent record of a message, then email is really good for that. But it doesn't allow all people always to be involved. So just be conscious of it. Okay, you get a trail of information, but if you're doing it too much, then people get swamped by emails and you lose the effectiveness of it. So be really careful how you're using that email. Webcam and video chat, that's a really great tool for one-on-one. It can be a good tool as well for brainstorming, rather than just broadcasting messages, although it's okay for that too. But I think it's much more useful in a one-to-one and a brainstorming situation. You get used to finding a tool that you can have breakout rooms and use whiteboards and doing some brainstorming together using webcams and video chat. Text messaging, I'm seeing this being used more and more. It gets an instant message out to people. Now as well with things like WhatsApp, it's going to be very common. You can see when people have read the message. You can have a trail of information, responses that come back from it. But the text messaging is better when it's time sensitive, like when you always need an instant response and you can get in front of people. Overuse it, people aren't going to interact as much on there. And look, telephone, it's a tool that we all grew up with. It's that tool that in our business world we've had for many years, but it's not always the most effective. So sometimes people can't hear you very well. That they might feel that they're multitasking. You don't get the visual cues from telephone. I'm not saying it's not the best always to be using. There is a place for telephone. Just be conscious of when you're picking up the phone or when you're texting or when you might be using the webcam. What is it that you want to get out of the communication to be as effective as possible? Right, so we go from thinking about engaging other people using technology into understanding ourselves. Probably the most important bit. If we understand ourselves, we work on ourselves, we can help our team. Definitely be seeking feedback from to be able to best serve our outcomes, our team, others, and ourselves. It's that 3O model. Start with the evidence that you have. If you're thinking about your organization and you can walk through your organization, whether that's physically or just in your own mind's eye, and understand what's going on throughout it and get evidence from that. Get evidence from notes, emails, files, threads. Understand, how are people feeling? What are they thinking about what you're doing and the decisions you're making? Like, try and get some of that evidence down. Make some judgment based on the evidence that you have. Definitely be identifying the people you trust, not the people that like you necessarily, but the people that you trust. Understand who they are and develop those trusted advisors. Make sure that you keep them really, really close. You don't just want people who are saying yes to every idea that you've got there in your organization. People who are going to challenge you and question you as well, okay? They're going to be the people that you'll be able to stretch yourself and your team for better outcomes as well. I mentioned this before, it fits in here really well. Ask open-ended questions, get some honest feedback. Based on what I've heard today, would this work for you? Would this be a problem? How would you think people would respond if I did this? Why would that be? Make them truly open, not presumptive, and get some rich feedback from people. Have those conversations richly and as often as possible. You're going to need to think about getting that feedback and giving people time to reflect that you're going to be asking them for the feedback. So you've got to be patient. You're not going to get it instantly. So if you want some feedback on a meeting that's happened, plant the seed with people. Go back to people at a staged approach and get that feedback back from them. So it fits into the same thing. Allow the preparation and make sure you have those conversations over time, because people's minds will and their own evidence will change as well. We started off in this area, but I'm going to come back to it, of examining your beliefs and self-talk. It's quite often that your beliefs are going to define how you lead. And you as a leader, we've got to have a very healthy self-image. They're not going too far into narcissism, right? There's some leaders out there, I'm sure in the chat box you could say who those people are that you know, that are in that arena. But you've got to be able to understand your position and be self-aware and have a healthy self-image. A few warning signs. If you've got some negative self-talk going on, here's a couple of examples. You're an idiot. Yeah, it's the worst idea ever. I can't do this. I'm a fraud. I'll be exposed. This is what's going on inside, not what's being shared necessarily. But ask yourself questions that will oppose some of those thoughts, and then change them into a much more positive point of view. Let me give you an example. So if you're saying, oh, I'm an idiot, it's the worst idea ever. You go, really? You're an idiot? Is it really the worst idea ever? What's the evidence that's backing it? Who says that? And of course, you won't really ever find, it's very highly unlikely that it's the worst idea ever, or that you're an idiot. So, it will be able to dumb down some of that and then figure out what it is you need to do to be much more positive in talking to yourself in that area. I can't do this. Change that to, look, I haven't figured out how to do this yet, or I haven't yet been able to do this. It's a much more positive angle in your brain to shift it towards solving a problem than holding and freezing that you just stop and don't do anything. So I'm a fraud and I'll be exposed. And the Leadership Institute look at this a lot, and there's this feeling, it's known as the imposter syndrome. probably heard it before. It's estimated around 70% of people have this within them. And there's some simple techniques to address this monster, this self-taught monster. Check your assumptions. Ask yourself, says who? Yeah. Accept positive feedback as valid. A lot of people I know that'll get positive feedback from people will push it away and say, do you know what? I don't believe you. Now that's really like someone giving you the best Christmas gift that you've ever received and throwing it back in their face and saying, I don't want it. Thanks very much. It's rude to them and it's rude to yourself, which is not great. You know, accept the positive feedback. People will give it genuinely, and they generally won't give it lightly either. And get help. You know, talk to your coach about it. Talk to other people. Ask for feedback. Get them to be open and honest with you. Okay, so from self-talk to acceptance, we can't do all of this. All right, so this is around your self-mastery or time mastery. We need to get help. We need to be able to delegate. We need to be able to share what's on our plate with other people. Acceptance that you can't do it all actually will help to relieve some of that pressure. I absolutely guarantee that. So find that balance between being responsible for your organization and also taking care of yourself. Right now, please be looking at your organization's processes and workflow. What can be improved? What would happen if I couldn't go into work tomorrow? Who's going to pick up the helm? Who's going to lead those areas? Now that's having a mindset of being in business for 200 years, you know, not just until you retire and close up your organization. Understand where the team can handle your activities. A really good task here is if you just sit down and write every task down that you do in a week, month, year. That'll be a long list, right? I get it. But write that down, and then next to each one of those tasks, understand what you have to do, right? What you have to do. It must be you, nobody else, right? That could be for some people, you know, working on the on something that's really top secret in your organization, or something that has to be done by you because you're the director, and it can't be done by anyone else. So that's the do. Delegate. What can you delegate? Right now, you might not be able to delegate it, but if you train some people to support you, if you got some support externally, who could you delegate it to? And what could you defer? What could you just move to one side? And actually, what could you delete? What really just gets in the way is a bit of a time sapper that you can get rid of. So delegate effectively and successfully, and consider your time. Balance your priorities, and being a remarkable distance leader, and know the difference between self-preservation and selfishness. Okay, if we need to be able to make sure that the outcomes of others do come before ourselves, but it doesn't mean to say that we surrender our sanity and our humility. We've got to be able to balance this off together as well. If you've not done this before, this is a really good task to do and take away. Sit down and say to yourself, what is important to me? Truly important. Actually, that's a really good add. Truly, what's truly important to me as a leader, and make a list. You can do this for everything. You can do what's truly important to me as a parent, what's truly important to me as a business owner, what's truly important to me in life. These create your values. Your values will determine where you focus. And we've all got the same amount of time. The question is, what do you focus in on? So this is about choice management. You can't do it all, we know that. So it's now about, well, what's valuable to me in life? What do I value? And how do I make a choice to go towards that? And then that will be balancing your priorities accordingly. Okay, so know your values, prioritize your activities. We're nearly at the end. Thanks for sticking with it all the way through. We're going to come to questions. So get your questions ready, get them in the box, and then we'll hand over to Joe to read some out. Rule number 18, make sure that you are developing yourself and your leaders. Think about the organization you want to be. Does your culture match your vision? A lot of the time it doesn't, and the culture needs to change. So you need to do something around that. And also you might need to start recruiting in the right way to get the right culture in your team. If you don't define your culture, I'm sorry to say that the team will create the culture for you, and it's probably not going to be the culture that you want. Once the culture's in, it's difficult to shift. It takes a lot more energy. So be intentional about your culture, and also what behaviors do you expect from your leaders as well. Be really clear on that and identify those gaps that need to be addressed. And identify people in your team that could be leaders of the future. This enables you to delegate more, develop them, have succession in your team, builds longevity, builds engagement, builds trust, all the things I'd spoken about before. But again, as leaders, I've seen people that are either they want to hold on to everything because they believe that nobody can do it better than them, right? That might be you. Or actually they just dissolve responsibility completely and they just push it out to people without supporting and developing them. Okay, so do make sure that you're getting the right people doing the right things at the right time. Last rule, remember rule number 1. Look, if all else fails out of this, remember rule number 1. Be a great leader. Worry about the location last or second to that. Leadership first. We've got to do the same things as leaders. And if you need the development in there, go and get that. We just need to think about it in a slightly different way. And your business and your community need you right now to be the very best leader that you can be. Be strong and be the leader that you need to be. And let's go and get leading, okay? So I'm going to hand over to some questions. As we do that, I want to finish up with these couple of points. Right now, on your sheet, list 5 things that you need to take action on today. Get your leadership plan ready for the next 90 days and schedule your individual plan for the next 90 days as well. I'm working with people on a 30-day plan at the moment because things are shifting so much. But think medium as well as short term. What I'm going to be offering everybody is a 2-hour leadership strategy session where we'll sit down and look at these things, your business, yourself personally, what obstacles are getting in the way. I'll spend 2 hours with you and your leaders in your team if need be. And I'm giving that to you at the moment complimentary because I know you can be the best leader. You're likely to get better results as a team and as a business. You're likely to stay in business much longer. And when we get out of this lockdown, you're going to be more successful. And I want to see every business out there being as successful as possible. Right, I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to talk enough. Joe, have we got any questions?
Okay, we've had a good question come in. How do I best identify if somebody is ready for a leadership role?
Oh, I love that. Love that question. I want you to think about the culture in your business, okay? You've got to define the culture, the values of your organization, the mission, the vision of where you're going. If you're seeing the right behaviors from an individual, so they're going the extra mile, they meet and match your values and vision of the business, then they're probably going to have some potential, okay? The second thing will be around their skill. Okay, so what's their skill in this area? They might be willing and have the right behaviors, have a high level of will. They might not have a high level of skill. I'm much more in a place where if someone has got a good high level of will, I can teach them how to be a great leader rather than them knowing how to be a great leader, but actually they don't have the behaviors. Behaviors first, skills second. And the other thing is as well is start delegating some of that work out to them. Make it small, make it and build them up over a period of time and see whether they are actually going to step up to the mark for you as well. So that would be my initial thoughts. Any others, Joe?
got my team don't want to engage when they're on furlough. What can I do?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's an interesting one. I have heard this a couple of times coming through. The first place you need to look is yourself. All right. You're a leader. How are you leading your team? What messages are you sending to your team? What communication are you giving to your team whilst they're on furlough? There's a load of stuff that you can still do with your team on furlough. Communication's one of them. Training's another, so long as they're being paid the national minimum wage for their training. But as a leader, having that conversation and allaying any fears, being really clear what it means to be on furlough, where the business is going, getting them excited about where the business is going in the future, getting them involved in some of that thinking as well. But start off with a base of what's going on for them. How are they thinking? How are they feeling? There's a massive amount of change happened at the moment. Your job as a leader is to have some humility around it and really understand and support people as best you can. Start off with that base and build from there. Build it up towards an expectation that you want them involved, you need them involved. This is going to help them, help the business and the outcomes of the organisation. All right. We have run over by a couple of minutes, Joe. So perhaps what we'll do is we'll leave it there. I've got a. I'd like you all to think about as well. Everybody who's listening, everybody who's joined the call, what are you most proud of as a leader? Given the pandemic that we've just been through, what are the things that you're really proud of? Go and celebrate those with yourself. Go and celebrate those with your team. What are you most proud about that you've seen from your team? Go and celebrate those with the team. Stay positive, stay healthy, stay focused, and go and be the best leader you can be. Joe, thanks very much for your support today. Everybody else, thank you for joining and being part of this session. Please take those actions away. Get in contact with me if you need a further conversation. And I just wish you the very best. Go and be the best leader you can be. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.